Good evening all and welcome. Tonight we're going to be heading down to the basement for a collection of truly terrifying scary stories, so I hope you're ready. We've also got something important to say at the end, but for now it's time to get comfortable. Flashlights at the ready, and let the darkness take control. For context, this happened when I was 22 years old and a senior in college. I'm a female, and I was following a particular politician and was going to rallies and other events in my spare time. Me and my friends were having a ball and loved being involved. One particular rally I went to was in the city. My friends and I took a train in and enjoyed ourselves. On our way home back to our university, I noticed a guy sitting across from us that I had recognized from campus. He was pretty cute, and I remember seeing him around, as we must have had some mutual friends. I said hi to him, and to my delight he also recognized me. We spoke for a few minutes and discovered we were both at the same rally. By the end of the train ride, he asked me for my phone number, and I was thinking, wow, a cute guy and we have something in common. I gave him my number but didn't think much past that. About a week later, I received a text from him. He asked me if I'm free this weekend, and if I would be interested in meeting up and having a drink. This particular time was during a break from school, so not many people were around. For whatever reason, I had chose not to go home. In my naive mind at the time, I thought, great, I have the place all to myself. I met him at our local bar, and we have a few drinks. It was pretty quiet for a Friday, as it was break time, and after an hour or two, decided to leave. I invited him back to my place for a bottle of wine and to hang out some more. He wound up staying the night and leaving in the morning, but when I woke up for whatever reason, I had an uneasy feeling. Nothing bad had happened per se, I just didn't like how things had went. I felt like he was so serious, not laughing or smiling the entire evening, although he always had a drink in his hand. I realized he wasn't really drinking them. The entire evening, he was kind of shifty and nervous. The only way I can describe it, it was like he was on a mission and waiting for something. There were all these red flags to me. I felt bad, but I was just not interested in this guy. To my relief, he didn't text me for a good while after that, and I assumed he came to the same realization that we simply weren't a good match. That is until about 2 to 3 weeks later. He writes me a message telling me that he's been busy, but really wants to meet this weekend and catch up. This particular weekend, my older sister was having a large party for her husband's birthday at their house a few towns away. A few of my friends and I were going to be there as always, because it's a very large group of people at their parties, at least 50 to 60. Now, let me be clear. These parties were not your typical get wasted and stay up till the cops get called type of college parties. They were more of an adult party, given my sister's husband is fairly older than us. Don't get me wrong, there were plenty of drinks and drinking going on and it was quite fun, just more of an adult type barbecue with day drinking. Me and my 2 girlfriends were going to spend the night, as I was going to drive there, but obviously we would be drinking. The party started early, at about noon. Against my better judgment, I invited him to the party, thinking it couldn't hurt. I gave him the address and the time. He seemed very interested and agreed to come. The day of the party was very fun, and my friends and I were having a blast. I must admit I did have a sinking feeling, and I was not looking forward to seeing the guy. Then, to my absolute and utter relief, I get a text from him saying he would be unable to make it. Finally, I could just relax and enjoy the party. About 12 a.m., everyone is getting exhausted from a full 12 hours of non-stop drink and partying, and as it's winding down, most of the guests have gone home, except for my friends and I and a few other guys, friends of my sister's husband, who were also sleeping there, and of course my sister and her husband. My sister had a guest room which was occupied, and a fully carpeted and finished basement. We had various blankets and pillows, and we're all going to sleep down there on the couch, pretty much anywhere you could lay. As I'm about to go down to the basement and get ready for sleeping, the man walks through the front door. No knock, no text, no anything. Just confidently walks straight into the house. I don't know why, but my initial reaction was fear. I pretended to be happy to see him and gave him a small hug. I asked him why he was there, to which he never gave a real response. All of the lights were out and everyone was gone. I was gesturing around and hinting at him that the party was over and that he had missed it. I felt bad that he had made the effort and decided to speak with him for a few minutes before I went to bed. We talked. I told him I was going to get ready for bed and that I'm sorry he missed the party. He goes, "Yeah, that's fine. This dude is just not getting the hint to leave." I leave the room and go to change my clothes and set myself up a bed and brush my teeth. I'm just hoping that he will leave, but I don't hear any movement from the other room. When I come back to the living room to check and see if he's actually still there, he is, and he is asleep on the couch. I obviously find this strange, but just assumed it was late and that he must have been very tired. He didn't seem out of place, as there were various other people sleeping at the house as well. I went to the basement and found myself a place to sleep on the floor. About half an hour to an hour later, I'm laying on the floor, still awake, thinking about how weird it is that he showed up. It's pitch black down there. There are a few people sleeping, including my friends, when I hear someone in the dark, slowly descending the stairs. I see they're holding a cell phone light to guide them. As the figure reached the bottom of the steps, I see it's him. Now, he has never been to this house. This is in a nice suburban area, it's not a frat house. And I did immediately think it was weird that he would randomly be walking through a house of a person he doesn't know. I, for one, pretended to be asleep. As I lay there frozen, I suddenly felt a tap on my shoulder. He doesn't say a word. He is over me and trying to wake me. I don't move and pretend to sleep still. I lay there in the dark silence, and am listening for his footsteps to walk away. I can tell he's holding a light over me. Then, with no warning, this man takes a step back, and with his boot on, kicks me full force in the face. I'm not talking about a little tap with his foot to wake me. No. Full force boot kicks me directly in the face. My face goes numb. I don't know what happened. I can feel the blood running down my nose. I open my eyes and look at him, and all I can remember saying is, "Why did you do that?" He just stared at me blankly and said nothing, turned around and walked back up the steps. I lay there paralyzed in fear. My heart is beating 1,000,000 times a minute. I don't know how long it was until I garnished the courage to get up, but eventually I army crawl in the dark over to my friend. Another man near her wakes up as well, and I explain what happened. We are all in a half-drunk daze and confused. I can't stay in this basement. I know he left, but I was so scared. My friends and the other guy offered to take me upstairs so that I could sleep in my sister's room. I go to my sister's room and lay next to her on the bed on the floor. I shut the door behind me, but unfortunately there was no lock. I don't know how, but eventually I fell asleep. At some point I wake up to my sister leaning over me. She asked what happened to my face and why I was in her room. Right as I'm about to answer her, my friend, who had helped me the night before, comes flying in, and she tells us the guy is still there and asleep on the couch. She runs out and I can hear her scream at him to get up and get out. I hear him arguing back and ask him where I am. My friend tells him that I've left and he begins arguing. He says my car is still there. I have no idea how he knew which car was mine, as he had never seen it before, and that I hadn't even taken my purse. Eventually, he leaves. After that night, he wrote me a message a few days later as if nothing had happened, asking me to hang out again. I block him, and I've never heard from him again after that. I graduated only 2 months later, and thankfully never even saw him on the campus again. To this day, I have no idea why he kicked me in the face, and how he had the balls to stay after that. I have learnt my lesson about giving out my phone number to creeps. Back when I was in college about 7 years ago, I had to move from an apartment to another last minute because, well, I was a lazy college student and hadn't made any plans. My parents were in town, so we were looking for something quick. Fortunately, we found something pretty cheap and somewhat nice right in front of the university. They were thrilled. I was just happy this was all over. So I moved in this kind of 4-room basement, which was already furnished. They said the last tenant cancelled last minute, and I only needed it for the 3 months of the summer, so he was giving us a great deal. The first room was the main room, which consisted of a living room and a little table to eat. Immediately on the right of it was the kitchen and the bathroom. The bathroom was on the left, and there was some kind of weird and small hall/connection joining it to the living room. Since the start, I always kind of felt uneasy about that bedroom for some reason, and preferred to sleep in the living room since there was already a comfy sofa bed in there and there were no windows in the bedroom. Throughout the semester, I felt countless times that someone was watching me from the bedroom when I was alone, either watching TV or playing video games. It was weird, and every feeling to the point where I preferred closing the doors leading to the bedroom altogether. I wasn't home that much, and sometimes I slept at friends', but every time I came back it felt like I wasn't alone in that apartment. There was never any sound or sights, just a strange feeling. I spoke of it to my friends and they laughed, since I was never the superstitious kind. So I kind of brushed it off the whole time, and thought nothing of it when I finished the semester. I kind of just moved on with life. About 2 years ago, one of my friends from college texted me, "Hey, is 17 the door number you lived at in that creepy basement back at uni?" "Yeah, why?" He then sent me a picture of an old local newspaper page. He had been looking through them at the library, looking for a picture of him back in his college football days. It was the obituary section from 2009. The picture of a young and good-looking female student. Next to her picture was the picture of a door and a dress which I recognized very well. Turns out, she hung herself in her bedroom closet. I grew up in a house that had a few spirits in it. My family are all skeptics and would find some way to explain things away. A few experiences, and then I'll get onto the main story. 1. Our house was 3 stories with technically 3 master bedrooms, 1 on each floor. The one on the main floor we used as an office. I would constantly hear someone walking around in the office at night, sinks turning on, toilets flushing, and occasionally talking. My parents would always say that someone was awake and making these noises, and the toilet and water running were just faulty pipes. 2. There would be a shadow figure that would pace on the top floor. There was a balcony that overlooked the foyer, and I would usually see who I presumed was a lady in a dress pacing. My parents just said it was a shadow of someone outside, as we are on a hill overlooking all our neighbors. I personally don't understand how this would be possible. 3. I hated using the upstairs bathroom, which was my bathroom. I would hear talking and singing from the bathroom. When no one was home, and I was there, I would occasionally hear bangs on the door. One time I was showering and listening to music, and I heard the bang very loudly, so loudly it shook the room. Then, the locked doors swung open, and finally I heard a scream. My parents said my brother was pranking me, which is something he never did. But let's get on to the main event. My brother is about 10 years older than me. He was the only sibling living at the house with me and my parents. He had the master bedroom in the basement. I was never really in the basement except for maybe going into the garage because it was in the basement next to his bedroom. I always remember feeling uneasy down there, but I wanted a big room. So when my brother moved out, I begged my parents to let me have his room, and eventually they caved and let me have it. I moved all of my things downstairs, painted and everything, and I loved my new room. I was talking to my brother about it one day, and he told me, "Watch out for the little girl who lives down there. She likes to laugh." I was shocked, and obviously he was just kidding. My whole family besides me never talked about stuff like that. I just laughed and shrugged it off. He was probably trying to scare me. About a week after I moved into my new room, I had a friend come over, and we were just laying on the floor next to the bathroom, laughing, when she had to go to the bathroom. She closed the door, and I was just zoning out when all of a sudden she goes, "Hey, that's not funny." I asked her what she meant. I didn't do anything. She said she heard someone laughing right outside the door, but I didn't do anything or hear anything either. She left freaked out, and assumed my brother put her up to it, since she liked my brother. A few days later, I hear someone in my bedroom while I'm in the shower. I call out thinking it's my mum, but I didn't hear anything. I get out, and as I'm putting my robe on, I hear a little girl giggle and then, "Are you looking for me?" I freak out, throw open the door to the room, but no one is there. I check the garage, and ended up setting off the house alarm, so no one could have come or gone through those doors without everyone knowing. I ran upstairs, and my mum is pissed that I set off the alarm, but then I tell her what happened. She told me my brother had a very similar story when we first moved in, but it was nothing. So I called my brother and asked him why he told me to watch out for the little girl. He said I was the little girl. He was kidding because you would always come downstairs and giggle really creepy. I never did anything like that. I told him that, and he got a little creeped out. I will still occasionally hear the girl. I never saw her, but she did like to laugh and open the bathroom door and closet. I called her Sarah. My brother called me up today and asked me about this. He asked me if I was sure I never tried to scare him by laughing and told him no. He became uncomfortable. I don't think he knows how to handle the fact that our house was mildly haunted. When I was a 12-year-old kid, and after my parents' divorce, my dad was having a pretty rough time financially. We moved around a lot, and for a little while him, my brother and I were staying in this unfinished old basement apartment. The layout of the apartment was a little weird. It was like a large U shape. I had my own room at one end, which was connected to the living room, where you would enter the apartment. My dad and brother, 3 years younger than I am, shared a room in the middle that you have to go through to get to the unfinished kitchen/laundry room area on the other end. From the moment we first started staying there, I was afraid to go into my room. When I went in there, even for a moment, I felt like I was being watched. It was this very heavy, anxious feeling that only existed in that room in the house. I think I slept in there once or twice before I started asking my dad if I could just sleep in the living room instead, usually on the couch. Sometimes he would bring my bed mattress out there for me instead, as I just couldn't go into that room, not even during the day. I don't remember when it started, but one night I was sleeping on the couch, and I woke up to the sound of chains scraping on the concrete floor of the kitchen. It was loud, and it sounded like it was getting closer to me. I was just frozen and didn't move. Eventually, I saw a dark figure with sharp nails and bright red eyes slowly shuffle from the kitchen into my dad and brother's room and stand at the foot of their bed between the two doorways. I stood there for a bit, and then it turned to face me. I remember the eyes so vividly to this day, as I'm 30 now, and the heavy chains that hung from its clothing and dragged on the floor. He stood there for a while before shuffling out towards me in the living room, and then going into my bedroom through the open door. I remember seeing this figure a lot when I stayed there with my dad, and apparently at one point I asked my mum if I had to keep going there because I was afraid, but I don't remember that. I felt bad if that did happen though, because my dad would have no idea why I didn't want to go anymore. Still to this day I've only told 2 other people about it, an ex who just made fun of me because he was a dickhead, and my current boyfriend who doesn't believe in ghosts himself, but was willing to at least consider/talk about my experience. I'm afraid even now that if I asked my dad or my brother if they ever saw anything strange in that house, they might say yes. It did stand at the foot of their bed, after all, and if they saw it too, then it definitely was real, which honestly terrifies me. This summer, I decided to pick up some graveyard shifts at my current full-time job, simply because it pays more and I am a university student drowning in student debt. About 2 weeks ago, on the rare occasion that I get to sleep during the time the sun is down, at 3:30 to 4 a.m, I was suddenly awoken by a loud sound. Me being half asleep, I honestly didn't know what the sound was exactly. So I just chopped it up to being one of my neighbors dropping something, because I live in an apartment with very thin walls. So I was just trying to go back to sleep. After about 10 minutes of laying there with my eye closed, I hear the sound again. But this time I'm pretty much awake, so I recognize what the sound is immediately. Someone was knocking on my window. For context, I'm a single female living alone in a basement suite, so my windows are basically level with the sidewalk. Anyway, obviously I'm freaked out. I don't know what the heck to do. I don't want to move and make any loud noises so they don't know I'm home, and I'm just frozen laying in this bed. Then I hear the knocking again. I instantly bolt up as my fight or flight kicks in and run to the front door, which has my keys with my pepper spray on it. The keys clink together and make a noticeable noise, and the knocking starts to get more intense and loud. This is when I realize the window with the screen by my bed is almost all the way open because my cats like to sit on the edge, and I forgot to close and lock it. I start to freak out, already having major anxiety. I search for my phone in case I need to ring the police. Me being clumsy and shaky, I drop my phone on the ground, and whoever is at my window proceeds to what sounds like slide either their fingernails or a sharp object down the screen. I realize that this person's intentions are to either come in or scare me, so like an idiot and not thinking, I run to the window as quickly as I can and slam it shut, and lock it while avoiding looking outside at whatever it was. The knocking stops, and I wait about half-hour without hearing any knocking. I lay back down and go right back to sleep. The next morning, I honestly couldn't believe that it even happened to me. I start to think maybe it was a dream, so I go outside and investigate, and I see an empty beer bottle and a ripped-up blanket. I text my only friend that knows where I live and ask them if they were messing with me. They say no, which I figured because they don't drive and live quite far away, and the buses around my house stopped running well before 3 a.m. So I called my landlord and told him what happened, and he obviously said to ignore it, and that this happened before, which was creepy. I obviously recognize now I should have done a lot of things differently and called the police right away. It hasn't happened since. Nevertheless, it's still terrifying, but I can't afford to move again. When my wife and I were house hunting, we went to a house that was in a pretty busy part of town, but sort of tucked back and out of the way of the main road. The outside was nice, big property, beautiful trees, but the backyard backed up to the main road, so you could hear the traffic. The owners had already vacated for the most part, other than staged furniture for showing. The upstairs was meh. Old carpets, outdated wallpaper, ancient kitchen. We weren't impressed. But we kept moving through, knowing we could talk down the price based on what we saw. The last thing we had to see was the basement, which you got to through the back of the kitchen. When I got to the top of the steps, I felt something. Maybe it was spidey sense, I don't know. I'm not really a sensing thing kind of person. My wife is very open to the supernatural and paranormal, and she felt the same thing. I stood on the top step and just felt this weird feeling. The feeling is hard to describe, but it legit made me stop in place. It was a feeling I've never had since. It was like I was walking into a dense, invisible fog that you could feel around you. The hairs on my arms stood up, and I just felt everything in my body saying, something is not right down here. But we walked down the steps, and it only got heavier as we went. When I got to the bottom of the steps, it felt like I was wrapped in a heavy, weighted vest and walking through sand. I looked at my wife and mouthed, "Do you feel that?" And the look on her face was one of just pure dread. She was pale white, and she was obviously feeling the same thing. She stayed at the bottom of the stairs and went, "I'm going back up. I don't think we needed to see anything else. Let's go." Before turning around and going upstairs, the realtor wanted to keep looking, so I moved through with her thinking we'd be quick. We opened a door and saw where the washer and dryers were, looked at the full bathroom, the sliding glass door out to the backyard, and then she goes, "I have no idea what this door is," and opened it. It was a flush panel, heavy metal door and frame that were painted to match the wall. We both thought maybe it was a fire safe, since it had such a heavy door and there were multiple locks on the outside. I mean, heavy locks. We opened it, and the room inside was maybe 5 foot by 5 foot and completely made of poured concrete, but it didn't look professionally done to me. It looked sort of sloppy and not quite smoothed out properly like a professional installation. It had 4 metal support poles in each corner of the room, about 3 inches from the walls, and they had clearly been recently painted white. The concrete floor and ceiling were painted grey, and there was a new metal drain covering that was in the dead center of the room. The walls. I swear to God, those walls looked like they had been filled with wall putty, like they were covering holes, but they weren't hole marks, like they threw a glob on there and then smoothed it out over. It was long drawn out patches. The first thought was, that looks like the scratch marks had been covered up. I looked at the walls and the poles, and you could clearly see there had been something rubbing against the poles, like the metal had scratched in the pole themselves. The feeling I had when I looked in that room, it made me sick to my stomach, like some kind of evil stuff went on in there. If I had just seen a picture of the room, I wouldn't have thought anything about it. But being there in person, the way the room made you feel, it was like something was kept in there. Something alive that wasn't meant to be in there. I could have easily looked at the picture, even if someone pointed out and was like, maybe it's a BDSM room for those owners. But it wasn't a feeling of, this room was for mutual enjoyment, if that makes sense. I closed the door, and when it was shut, I was filled with an overwhelming sense of panic, of fear, of run, and I could feel shivers going up and down my spine. It was like something was standing right behind me, breathing down my neck. It wasn't my realtor. She was standing next to me, speculating the room could have been a makeshift fire safe. But the overall feeling and impression was that it was definitely not with good intentions. We started to leave, and we heard what sounded like a low moan, like someone was in pain. But there was nowhere for the noise to come from. We could see the entire basement from where we were at, and there was nothing. So we just went, maybe it's the wind outside, and started to move up the stairs. We made it to maybe the 4th and 2nd stair respectively, and the door to the basement, that had previously been opened and held open by a door jamb, slammed shut behind us, like someone took the thing and used their full force to slam it closed. The realtor looked back at me and goes, "I guess the air kicked on and forced it closed?" I looked at her and just said, "Yeah, that's probably it." And we made our way up the stairs. When my wife and I were leaving, we sat in the car for a moment, and I looked over at her and went, "Please tell me you felt that too." She responds with, "Babe, I'm so glad you couldn't see what I saw." I asked her what she saw, and she said the moment I got downstairs, there was a black thing, not a cloud or image or anything, but there was just a black transparent shadow behind me. She said the thing was huge and completely dwarfed me, like it went floor to ceiling in the basement. It was pretty tall and wide, maybe two of me standing side by side. She said when she saw it, she froze, and that's why she tried to get me to go upstairs with her. It was something not friendly, she said, and was scared it was going to try and harm me, if it could. That whole experience changed my views on the paranormal forever. My family moved into this house a few months ago, and my mum and I both experienced a lot of activity moving in. A few weeks ago, I was playing piano in my room, which is the basement, and I get really frustrated while learning songs because I couldn't hit this one note, so I decided to take a break. When I was walking back to the piano, it played a key very loudly by itself. However, what really freaked me out was that it was the key that I was having trouble hitting. I immediately got full body shivers and felt extremely flushed and lightheaded. So I went up to my parents' room to tell them. My mum said she heard it play by itself while putting things in storage, but she had heard more than one key play. Also, my mum was taking live photos in the basement because she takes photos and she feels something in there. All the photos turned out to be normal except two. In the first one, you can hear a deep voice say, "They're watching." And the photo immediately after shows 5 large orbs in different places of the room. It's so crazy to me how the image coincides perfectly with what was said right before it. This house has been saged multiple times, but things keep happening. I don't know if I should just try and get more evidence or leave it alone to avoid stirring up something bad. I also always see shadows moving, but never feel like I should necessarily be afraid. This happened in February of last year. We have a cottage about 45 minutes away from my parents' main home. It's not too far from Huntsville/Muskoka, Ontario, if anyone wants a visual. The thing is, it's completely unfinished. The basement has no proper flooring and has a slight water leak now and then, especially now. So there are plenty of fans and dehumidifiers running. As a result, one of us needs to check on the place at least once every 2 to 3 weeks to empty the dehumidifier in the basement and make sure everything's alright. To describe the house layout a bit, the entrance to the basement is directly in front of the main entrance. It's a long, skinny staircase down with a low roof, so you need to crouch on the way down. There is one crappy light bulb in the ceiling, so it's always very dark down there. There's one big room, then 2 hallways branching off. One hallway leads to a bedroom, and the other leads to not only a second bedroom but also a washroom, all of which are completely unfinished and without lighting. The second hallway is much longer, and the rooms are just way off in the back corner of the basement and are completely dark. In other words, it's creepy looking. So let's take you to the day it happened. My mum and I are heading up there to empty the dehumidifier, have some lunch and clean out some junk, as we're slowly gutting the place. It had been nearly 3 weeks since we'd checked up on the place at this point. We stopped at a McDonald's beforehand, and each got a fish combo. First time trying one was actually not that bad. We get into the place and put our food on the table, then turn the heat on. The first thing we do is run downstairs to turn the water on and check the dehumidifier. After turning on the water, we head over to the dehumidifier and notice that there's hardly any water in it. It looks like it's only been running for a few days. There's still the regular amount of moisture on the ground, but it was strangely empty. My mum and I head upstairs and she grabs her phone to text my dad and ask if he had stopped by to empty it recently. He said he had not. We were both puzzled as to why it looked so empty, but never considered there was something else afoot. After heating up our food, we both sit down at the table and turn on the TV. About 5 minutes into our meal, we hear a massive bang downstairs, almost as if someone stubbed their toe really badly on a cupboard or something. We instantly jump and looked at one another with a freaked out look on our faces. The TV is still playing rather quietly. We then hear the worst thing. A small grunt coming from downstairs. It was unmistakably a human vocal sound. "Was that a person?" my mum whispers, and I nod. It was freaky. I wasn't really taking it very seriously for some reason. Looking back, it was pretty serious. They could have been dangerous. I told her to grab a jacket and that we should leave and call the police. So we gathered our things and I grabbed the kitchen knife on the way out. If you'll recall, the entrance to the basement is directly across from the main entrance to the house. So I had to make this peek around the corner and was fully expecting to see a person on the dark staircase. But luckily for me, it was just a series of stairs down into the dark abyss. Once we're out front, we jump in my car and she calls the cops immediately. Within 3 minutes, 4 cruisers show up and 5 cops get out. We told them what had happened, and they headed down the driveway. They were in the house for about 10 minutes before the door opened. A few cops walked out and boom. The third cop brought out a short, chubby guy with long black hair and pop bottle glasses. They brought him out handcuffed on the front steps, and another cop had a bag that looked like his belongings. We were in our car, which was up the street a bit and facing away from the entrance of the cottage. But my mum turned away as soon as he was brought up the driveway. She didn't want to get a good look at him, as the whole situation was quite unsettling for her. They loaded him in the back of one of the cruisers and took him away. One cop came over and spoke with my mum for a bit about the situation. Ultimately, my parents had decided not to press charges against the guy. He was just sleeping on the cold cement ground with a small roll-out mattress, even though there was a proper bed upstairs. This just made us think he'd been down there in the back hallway in the unfinished bedroom for a while. We probably walked downstairs to empty the dehumidifier and turn on and off the hot water a number of times, and he was 15 feet away in one of those bedrooms. He probably wasn't a bad person, and I'm thankful that at least he decided to empty the dehumidifier. Hopefully, he lived in there for most of the colder months this past winter. We were just lucky he didn't turn out to be one of the crazy squatters. I was in an antique store in the Midwest United States. The buildings are narrow in downtown, and you enter the store on the first floor. I walked to the back, then downstairs, and back to the front of the building, but there was no exit, so you have just backtracked up to the first floor and out the front. The access to the second floor must have been restricted from the public or something. I walk in and there's no one there that I can see ahead of me. I make it back down, then proceed downstairs. I've been to this store several times, so I'm aware there's a TV at the base of the stairs that plays VHS movies. It's quiet for a while, aside from the audio from the TV, which I can plainly hear and discern. Rather suddenly, I hear a lady in some distress, presumably on the phone, because there wasn't anyone responding to her. "Why can't you understand? I can't go on like this. Why do I deserve any of this? She's manic." This is all happening over the low volume of the TV. I felt a little uncomfortable and considered leaving. She stopped talking, so I resolved to just walk past her. She must have been about 10 feet on the left, in the next booth or two. Absolutely expecting to see a crying woman, I was confused after getting to the dead-end basement, where it felt like I walked in front of an AC window unit, and the hairs on my arms stood on end. I didn't have time to be spooked or scared. None of it made sense. It was just very confusing. I called the owner today. She never experienced anything like this, but several other people have. She listened intently to my story and said she was very sensitive to spirits and thanked me for telling her about it. I was 12 and staying over at a buddy of mine's house. His dad was a cop and very reclusive, so as much as I hung out at their house, I had only ever seen him a handful of times and never engaged him. We had a spot in the basement where we played Nintendo. To our left was the furnace/workshop room. His dad usually stayed upstairs, but not in the living room, usually the parents' bedroom, I suppose. When I saw him standing in the furnace room at the workbench, I'll never forget, he was wearing a red flannel. I was shocked to see him look at me and grin slightly. My natural reaction was to look away, and a second or two later, when I curiously looked back at him, he was gone. I didn't think anything of it. Later on upstairs, he asks his mum where Dad is. She said he's off at work. No, he isn't, I say. He was just downstairs at the workbench. My friend and his mum fell silent. My mum asked him what he was wearing, and I replied, "A red flannel." My buddy was petrified, the mother shaken. It was not until years later that I realized I had seen a ghost. Neither mum or son ever elaborated on it. Shortly afterwards we went to junior high, where I found new friends, and regrettably sort of lost contact with him. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. I hope that you have all been well. Well, it's time to address the elephant in the room. I'm really sorry about the train video, so complaints on all fronts. When I made the compilation, I actually only had train stories. I didn't realize that it had been duplicated, and it really bothered me that happened, because I'm quite good with checks. And then when I realized I'd pasted something in, allegedly twice, I wasn't best pleased. So I'm very sorry. I've taken the video down. Well, I've made it unlisted, so if you were watching it at the time, you could still watch it, but, other than that, it's gone. You shouldn't be able to find it. Would you like me to release the audio on SoundCloud so that I'll obviously edit it properly this time, and everyone can just hear the stories as they were intended to? Please let me know if there's something you'd like, and I'll go ahead and do it if you'd like me to. So yeah, I'm just very sorry about that. Also, I've been looking at my analytics, and it would appear that the best days for me to post are not in fact Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, but are actually Wednesday and Sunday. And I think if I want to keep doing 3 videos a week, which I do like doing, I would probably post on Friday, just so everything fits in quite neatly. So I may be trialing that at some point soon. Also, in regards to having visuals, I know some of you complained that you wanted the black screen. I think there are people out there who would like the visuals. Maybe some of you do already. I know a lot of you do watch this for falling asleep. So I'm trying to come up with a compromise of having mostly darkness on screen, but also something just there. Maybe I can have rain or something. I just want to try something, even if it's dark, even if it's not too bright. I'd like to play around with this, so I hope that you guys have a little bit of patience while we play around, get some feedback from all of you, and you can say. And I know you guys love it, and I'm really glad you love it, and I'm not saying it's going away. I'm just saying that, as a creator, I like making things, and it does get a bit repetitive when you just make the same thing all the time. I really want to start making, I really want to just spice things up every once in a while. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, I think that's enough babble from me. I really appreciate you guys coming today. I really hope that you've enjoyed the video, and hopefully I'll see you on Thursday for probably a dose of attic stories. Until then, stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one. And a huge thanks to my members and patrons, by the way, names on screen. I love you guys so much. You guys are the best. Bye.